Okay, YouTube viewers, I said earlier that I will be sharing a video on stuff that's a little more sensitive and everything like that. Basically, I would like to introduce my 3 amazing and wonderful children and basically how they changed my life. For starters, my oldest child, who is Jennifer, she was born in 2009. She was 7 pounds, 3 ounces, 21 1/4 inches long. I was a teen mother. I was 18 years old when I gave birth to her. I conceived her January 26th and delivered her about 2 to 3 months before my birthday, before I turned 19. I honestly had considered adoption and everything like that because I didn't feel that I was ready. However, once I delivered her and they laid her on my stomach, I absolutely fell in love. There is just something completely special and magical when you actually see your child for the first time and you get to hold them in your arms. Basically, I've been there for her and done everything that I can for her ever since. Later on, I conceived another son, my first son, in the end of 2010, about November 14th, or November 15th is when I conceived him. I didn't know I was pregnant till February 2nd. I continued all my regular activities. I did drink. I had no idea I was pregnant with him. I later found out at about 13 weeks gestation, he had a complication, making my pregnancy a high-risk pregnancy. I found out right after I lost my job. I lost my job because I was constantly sick. I was constantly throwing up and everything like that. I was late, but it happened, and I guess it was a blessing in disguise because I didn't know he was high risk. He had gastroschisis. Gastroschisis is when the umbilical cord, as the baby is developing from fetus, which is in the cocoon form, or at least that's what I like to call it, and developing outwards, where they start making the head development, head shaping, the buds for their arms and their legs, and when the umbilical cord forms completely and their stomach is supposed to completely closed, it did not. He had a hole about a little bit bigger than the size of a quarter. His intestines floated outside of his body for the whole pregnancy. I was referred to a high-risk facility. I was closely monitored. I had an appointment typically about 2 times a month. They did a lot of ultrasounds, and they also, toward the end, did a lot, about 2 to 3 times a week, fetal monitoring, making sure he was moving, his heart rate, maintained and everything. At closer to 37 weeks, they decided to induce to prevent the risk of his intestines hardening from being exposed to the amniotic fluid for much longer. So we went in to a class 3 NICU because of how high risk he was. I delivered him on August 5th, 2011. I named him Jonathan after my great uncle who had passed away earlier in the year on January 4th, 2011. His name was Jonathan Michael. They showed us that not only his intestines were outside of the body, his liver was out and one of his testicles were also out. We had about 5 nurses in the room when I delivered him. I wasn't allowed to hold him. They had to immediately take him over and observe the color of his intestines, make sure that they were lubricated and everything, and that everything was how it was supposed to be. I did get the epidural, so I was not able to walk right away once they transferred him over to the infant care NICU. I would rub my legs desperately. I wanted to go see my son. They eventually decided just to bring in a wheelchair so that this way I could go see him. He was 5 pounds, 3 ounces, and 18 inches long. Now, I knew that we had a 98% chance of him surviving and living a normal life, and a 2% chance of losing him. I wanted to give him a chance, and the best chance possible. We had lots of doctor's appointments, lots of rushes to the ER. The whole time in August, he was in the NICU. He was there for about a month and a half before I could take him home. During that time, a CPS investigation was opened against me, which made things so much harder. Not only was I able to stay at the hospital with him because I had to take care of my daughter, I now had a CPS investigation. I went through several months of that as well. But in all that time, my children were able to stay with me. I was deemed the safe parent. I made sure to do everything asked of me and everything told of me. They helped us get daycare, so the kids were able to start going to daycare, and I was able to finish schooling. I was going for my medical assistant degree at that time. Now, with that being said, when he was born, they put his intestines in a silo, and it's a bag that hangs over the infant's stomach, and it's attached to them with a sticky solution around where the umbilical cord did not close, and the bag is attached to that, and it hangs with a bar over it to help gravity kind of help, push it into their stomach and everything like that, and help expand the skin. He didn't have enough skin stretch for them to just put the intestines back in, so we had to wait. And after about the first week, they were able to do the first surgery, and the first surgery was placing the intestines back in and sealing the hole and attempting to make a possible belly button for him as best as they could. Now, I went every chance I got a ride. I would, go down there with the car. Every chance I got, I would go see my son. I was breast pumping like crazy. I was desperate to make sure he got everything that he needed, and breast milk, and it's amazing. It does wonders for our children. I breastfed Jennifer, and I breastfed Jonathan, and I breastfed Christopher. With that being said, about a month after I took him home, I had to rush him back to ER in September, it was early October, late September, around there, and he had an infection where they had done the surgery, so he was given antibiotics. It was pussing and bleeding. I did everything to keep it clean, started him on the antibiotics, monitored him, watched him closely. And I don't know if any of you have had a child who just would not sleep in their crib or the playpen. He would only sleep in the swing. He would only sleep in the swing at the hospital as well. We don't know why that is. Later, he would only sleep in his car seat, and I tried desperately to try and transition him multiple times. 2 hours at most is what he would sleep in the crib or the playpen, but he would not sleep the whole night in there. So I rushed him to the hospital for that one. The next time, his lips turned or swelled up and his leg turned purple. That was Thanksgiving weekend in November 2011. I rushed him to the hospital. I made sure he got seen, and they said it is a potential allergic reaction or even possible force of a pacifier bottle being forced in his mouth. Well, daughter is 2. She does try to help with the pacifier. I'm not sure what happened, but I did have a talk with her. I did have a talk, with everyone in the household. That was no fun. I closely monitor him. The hospital closely monitor him. They took chest x-rays and everything. It was noted that he did have a latex reaction. So we no longer could use anything revolving latex. Daycare had to be notified of his allergy to latex. Doctor had to be notified. So we did all the follow-ups. We made sure he got the care that he needed. Later on on January 26, 2012, he stopped breathing at the daycare, started to turn blue, and scared the gal at the daycare. They called me. I was about a 25 to 30 minute drive from the daycare, and I got there in 10 minutes. And I'm very dedicated and committed to my children, desperately. So I rushed him to a hospital. I got him seen immediately. They decided to do an overnight monitoring. We then discovered that the only time that his oxygen levels were above 94% was when he would sleep on his stomach and not his back. When he slept on his back, his oxygen levels would decrease below 94%, which was not a safe zone. They released him the next day after taking chest x-rays. It was a very stressful time, very upsetting, exhausting. I stayed with him that whole night at the hospital with him. Made sure Jennifer had someone to watch her. Now, I took him to the doctor. He got cleared for his second surgery. I went in, we got him all prepped, or the doctors got him all prepped. They had an anesthesiologist monitor him, and they did his testicle descent, or descending the testicle. And that took about an hour of waiting, anxiety, not knowing what could potentially happen, just waiting. They came out, they got me, I got to go hold him and everything, rock him, and he was such a trooper, just such a trooper. Took him home, they prescribed Tylenol with codeine. He didn't even need it. Each day after the surgery, he never cried. He never acted like he was in pain. Now on March 5th, I had to take him to the doctor again for severe coughing. His breathing was abnormal. I took him in and he had developed bronchiolitis. So he was immediately started on breathing treatments and antibiotics. I did it about 2 to 3 times a day per doctor's orders, every day for a whole week, or almost a whole week, because 5 days later, on March 10th, 2012, at 9:43, I found my son. He had rolled over in the car seat, and the car seat hadn't rolled over. He had physically rolled over in the car seat from his back to his stomach. And at first, it was a proud mommy moment. I was excited. Then when I did a double take and he was pale, he wasn't breathing, I immediately took him out. and started CPR. And I know many of you are probably going to give me crap for letting him sleep in the car seat, but I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted my son to be comfortable. I screamed for my mother and father-in-law to call 911. 911 was notified at about 9:45. I continued CPR and talking to him and begging him. I begged him not to go. I told him he's not supposed to go before his mom. And the look in his eyes at first was just complete, just help me, Mom, just help. And I tried. I don't know how many times I kept going, how many compressions I did, or how many breaths. I just kept trying. The moment I told him that I loved him, the look in his eyes just changed. It went from help me, Mom, to it's okay. It's okay. It wasn't okay for me. I didn't want to let him go. At 10:03 in the morning, a police officer arrived and took over chest compressions and CPR. I asked her, what can I do? Tell me what I can do. And she told me, you've done enough. You've done enough. And I told her, I said, I don't even know if he has a pulse. She searched for a pulse and couldn't find one. She went over her walkie-talkie and told him there's no pulse. EMTs arrived shortly after. They came in and picked him up and just ran out of the house. And I followed them. Once they got him into the EMT I tried to go with, I got in the car. And one of them grabbed me by the arm and said, no, you have to stay out. And pulled me out of the EMT. The police officer who had arrived on scene first told me, if you want, I will give you a ride to the hospital. That is the first time and only time I have ever been in the back of a police car. And during that ride, the entire time, I just kept asking her, is he okay? Does he have a pulse? Is he breathing? And she goes, I don't know. I just don't know. I said, just please, just have God take me instead, but not my baby. We got to the hospital and they kept asking me so many questions. What Eddie had, if he had anything different, what medications he was taking. And I told him everything. I told him he had been prescribed Tylenol with Codone back in January, but that he was no longer taking that. I told him he was taking the albuterol. I told him that he was taking the infant Advil. I told him everything that he was taking, how I found him, what I was doing. I left the room for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and he was crying when I left the room. I gave my daughter breakfast, made a bottle, got his diaper and wipes, and came back in. They had 5 doctors working on him, and they sat outside the room just helplessly watching. Not knowing what to do, asking the nurse if they could find a pulse, asking the nurse, what can I do? I kept telling her, he's my little trooper, he's my champ. And I told her, I said, he has to make it. He has to pull through. He just has to. Doctor came out And he took me by the hand. I knew. I just freaking knew. I told him, I said no. No. He told me, I'm sorry, but he didn't make it. I held my son. I held my son for 2 hours. I rocked him. I sang to him. I told him how much I loved him. And I pronounced him at 10:36 in the morning. You never think that your children are gonna go before you. You never think that you're gonna have to bury your child versus your child having to bury you. I was devastated, heartbroken, angry. I didn't know what to do. When I left the hospital, I told my mom, I said, I know he's not there in his body, but that I didn't want to leave him there. That I just wanted to take him home and hold him. It's not fair. That's how I felt. It's not fair. What did I do to deserve this? She later took me home after being at the hospital for a total of 4 hours. She took me to the doctors where they prescribed me medication to help with the anxiety and everything that I was feeling. At about 5 o'clock that night, on March 10th, CPS came in and took my daughter. They told me, until we rule you out as to having a cause in your son's death, that they had to remove her from the home. I felt like I was losing not just one child, but 2. And I told them, I said, please just place her with family. Just place her with family. They asked me who. I told them my grandmother, my daughter's great-grandmother. And I called her on the phone and I told her what was happening. And she said, just bring her here. So I took her there with the CPS caseworker to make sure she got there. Every day for that whole month without either of my children, without holding them, rocking them, singing to them, reading to them, doing anything with them. I did a lot of self-blame. I thought maybe if I had just taken him with me, maybe if I had done this differently, maybe if I had just done something, just something different. I sunk into depression. My anxiety was off the wall. I was extremely angry. I had several severe panic attacks. I had several hours and hours of just non-stop crying. We held the funeral 1 week after he passed. They did a full autopsy. And we were just waiting for the toxicology, waiting for the autopsy report, just waiting. I had so many family and friends show up. So many people came and supported me, held me, told me how sorry they were. Some of them wanted to tell me that they understood. I didn't feel like they understood. And for a while I hated that every time I would go on social media that everyone just kept going on. And I couldn't understand that at first. I was like, here I am, I just lost my child. And my other one's been taken. I've lost my whole world. That's how I felt. So once again, I did everything that CPS asked of me. My son, on April 4th, 2012, I got my daughter back. I got my daughter back. I got my daughter back, and it was the best and most amazing feeling in the whole world. And I was so happy, so excited, so stoked. Then, it didn't stop there. I finished school. I graduated April 7th. And I never gave up. I knew he would want me to finish what him and I had started. I knew he wouldn't want me to be sad. And I knew he would want me to get his sister back. So I did. I never gave up or lost hope or lost sight of what I needed to do. I put everything I was feeling on the back burner and I pushed forward. For 2 years I struggled with his loss. For 2 years I couldn't accept it. For 2 years I could not read his autopsy report. For 2 years I did not focus on healing. For 2 years I was numb and just not myself. I finally took the time to heal. I read the autopsy report. Yes, I cried. Yes, it was the hardest thing to ever read. His cause of death was sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. They could find nothing for the toxicology. They could find nothing with his body. I'm left with questions and no answers. And I'm okay with that right now. Do I hate it? Absolutely. I hate it. But each day that I live, each day that my daughter grows and my son grows, he grows in our hearts. And I know we are never alone without him. He gave me the strength to leave an abusive relationship. He gave me the courage to actually stand up for myself and to free myself. I wish every day that he could be here, and I would give it anything to just have one day, one moment, just to hold him, rock him, and kiss him. This is Jonathan. I absolutely just miss him so much. They said his smile would just completely just light up the room wherever he was. In every place he went into, you couldn't help but smile. I later, in 2013, was blessed with another son, 6 pounds, 1 ounces, and 18 inches long. Christopher has been a complete blessing once again. All my children are blessings, and I am grateful. Christopher, it's a little different. It is sometimes hard. I got to see him crawl. I got to see him walk. I got to see him roll over both ways. I didn't get that with Jonathan. But I know he's watching over us. And I just wanted to share our story. I wanted to share what I've been through that I know other moms have been through. And I'm sorry the video is so jumpy, but it's a very, very hard topic sometimes. Sometimes I can talk about it as long as I don't go into detail. But I did go into some details on here. And it's not easy. I had a high-risk child, but I was blessed with so much more. I was blessed with his laughter, his smiles, and the memories that he has embedded in my heart and my daughter's heart. Because of him, I was able to find just everything that I needed and more to do what I need to do and to be the person who I am today. My son just inspired me to be the best that I can be. So hold your children close. Hold your family close. Love them with every ounce of your being. And if you've experienced this, I'm sorry. It's the hardest thing any mother, father, family should ever have to go through. With that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful night. I'm gonna go grab some hankies, tissues, and probably have a good cry. Have a good night. Bye, YouTubers.